Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm again here with the Archivist, and we just finished the first 3 episodes of Andor, and we're here to bring you our initial thoughts and
Yes,
more of
sir.
our breakdown of the first 3 episodes, and let you guys know how we felt about it, how we felt about it as hardcore Star Wars fans and as Legends fans in particular. And Disney Star Wars is sort of in a predicament now. I know there were a lot of rumors that Kathleen Kennedy would be stepping down prior, but those all got blown up. But just actually
Well,
today,
sort
there
of.
were articles that came out that said that she will be stepping down in August. So
I
the
saw
reason I
those.
bring this up is because a lot of the rumors were circulating that Kathleen wanted to go out with a win, and that win is Andor. So, for a lot of reasons, this series is really big over at Lucasfilm, especially because the first one is so adored by critics, and it looks like season 2 is on track to be adored by critics as well. It actually debuted with a 98% from critics score on Rotten Tomatoes, so a lot of people are really excited. I will say this about Andor season 2. If you were not a fan of the first season and you thought that you might give this one a try, it's not going to win you over at all. There's an elephant in this room also, where they
Yeah.
felt the need to write something into Star Wars that a lot of fans, myself included, and the Archivist included, feels
hmm
like doesn't belong in Star Wars and isn't really what we go to a galaxy far, far away for. We already dislike what the Empire is. We dislike what they stand for. And we dislike how they treat the people of the galaxy. There's a line that I don't think you should cross at all in Star Wars, and I don't think George Lucas would have ever crossed the line, and they did. But with that said, we're going to go
Yeah.
positives to negatives on the first three
Mm.
episodes of Andor. So I'll let you go ahead and take it from here, man. What did you think about the first 3 episodes of Andor in a positive way? Like, what stuff stuck out to you that you liked?
I'm going to be completely honest. I had a great time watching until the very end. But we'll get to that in a minute. Honestly, I was having a really good time. First of all, the visuals massive step up this time from some of the previous Disney Plus shows we've been getting. The backgrounds, the locations. Oh my gosh, the locations. They were just incredible. Like they used a lot of physical sites. There's none of this I don't know what they call it. Whatever that soundstage weirdness that they were doing in Kenobi, none of that's present here. It's all physical locations, physical sets, and it you can absolutely tell the difference. It is just really, really good. Um, but let's see, and also
I feel like they
CGI look
populate the galaxy really well in Andor too. Like
they
it feels
do.
lived in. That's something that I picked up right away is, oh, the Imperials working at this secret research facility when they're studying the TIE Avenger and trying to get that, mass produced and to be
hmm
an experimental weapons facility, which I thought was a fun little addition in the fact that they all sort of know each other, and oh, the new pilot's cute. It makes it all feel very lived in. And I would
Yeah,
say that for Andor as a whole, where if you choose to look at this small little section of a galaxy far, far away, I think you can get away with it being in the same universe and feeling like it's in the same universe to an extent. But with that said, as we'll talk about later, I think Andor occasionally tends to step over that boundary away from Star Wars entirely. Sorry to cut you off. I just thought that
no,
I
you're
wanted to add
good.
on to the fact that the sets and making everything feel really lived in is a big positive for the show. And I know a
It
big
is.
reason for that, unfortunately, is that a lot of the budget from the Obi-Wan show and from other projects that some of us would like to see get higher budgets were all put into Andor. Andor is one of the most expensive television shows ever made. So that's unfortunate. But with that said, we can't take away the fact that dang, does it look great.
You know what? Unlike The Acolyte, the show which must not be named, you can actually see the budget here. You can see it. Because I mean, it's right in your face. Because just yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to watch it for yourself and just kind of be in awe of the environments and the landscapes and the costuming, and the makeup. What I was really interested in is the creatures that we saw. There was only one creature that I saw that was like overtly CGI, unless I'm just blind. But all the other creatures were makeup, like people in costumes. And I even saw an animatronic in one of the scenes where like all the villagers were having that big meal. There's like this big sort of farm beast of burden in the background munching on some hay, and that thing was a huge animatronic, and it looked amazing. I love that we're starting to get more physical aspects in Star Wars again.
They're
And
really
also,
starting to nail that CGI to actual physical set animatronic
yes,
blending well too. Like how you said in
absolutely,
Obi-Wan, a lot of this has to do with budget, I'm sure. But in
yeah,
Obi-Wan, in their final battle, it really didn't feel real at all in a lot of places.
it was a little rough, that's for sure.
It was rough. And again,
Yep.
Andor does such a good job there. So that's another thing I really liked as well. It feels authentic.
And on that note, I was actually noticing that the people behind Andor seem to be quite familiar with a lot of the Star Wars games that came before. We have no, a lot of people pointed out that Andor Cassian's blaster in the first season is the same blaster that Kyle Katarn uses, and I noticed that in the beginning of the episode he also uses a computer spike just before getting into the TIE Avenger, and of course those are from KOTOR. And of course, we get the drop of Sayonara or Sayonara, whatever they called it, Sayonara in the show. I'll just say that. And for those who know, Wraith Sayonara is Palpatine's personal starship designer.
He's a big deal in Legends. It's
He
like
sure
where
is.
Palpatine gets all the prototypes for even his own personal ships. So it's cool to see that highlighted more. I thought that was super sick too.
And on the subject of ships, right? How cool was the TIE Avenger? That
TIE
thing
Avenger,
was sick.
yeah, when Cassian is shooting out of the hangar bay, wow. And when they even try to tip it over later with like the scoundrel rebels, I guess you could call them, even though I have
Yeah,
issues with that subplot that we'll get into.
get into
I
it
think
later.
that the power of the TIE Avenger is sick.
Apparent.
And when you're put in the cockpit, that's even cooler.
It is cooler. The thing that I wrote down in my notes here while I was watching the show is that the HUD on the viewport, it looks almost identical to the HUD in Star Wars Squadrons. For those of you that played that game, you know you've got like the little triangles outlining the enemy ships incoming, and you can like kind of see all your systems and stuff. And so like the whole HUD was very reminiscent of the game. So the creatives behind this show are really bringing a lot of love from the Star Wars games here, which is just super great to see, I think.
And going on to the second episode, we got the appearance of Ben Mendelsohn as Krennic, which I think is one of the stronger Disney characters. And Ben Mendelsohn can really act. And tying together this group of Imperials who were heavy hitters in the last season of Andor. These were the guys that we were afraid of, the ISB. And now that they are having to suck up to Krennic, I loved his line to Deidre where he says, "Don't talk to me like you're hiding something. That's below you now." I thought that was so cool. I also died laughing when he revealed like the little commercial, if you will, for what was it, Gorma? The system Gorma? Gorman, yeah, and the silk fabrics and how they had brought in other Imperials to create like this campaign to just destroy the whole planet, and it reminded me a lot of Order 66 propaganda. I just thought everything from the set that they were in to the acting with Ben Mendelsohn to the subtle comedy, that was probably the highlight for the first 3 episodes for me. I just thought they absolutely cooked there.
I texted you about this while we were watching. I really like that we're getting to see the Imperials be intelligent and cunning. Krennic in Rogue One, he played his role perfectly as sort of the guy that wants desperately to be in charge of the Death Star project, and he's meeting resistance every step of the way, whether it's because of the rebels or because he's being undermined by imperial bureaucracy and politics. But in this show, Krennic is put in a position where he's a lot more in control. So we're not seeing a panicked Krennic who's like trying to scrape around for achievement and recognition. He's like the guy on the mission, and you can see that. And he's like dangerously intelligent, and he's drawing out other, like Deidre, he's drawing out her dangerous intelligence just by his presence and the way he talks to her.
But he's still a charlatan. He's a liar because he's not speaking to the Emperor regularly. He's not having these constant interactions with Palpatine where he is allowed to share information before Sidious does. I love that he's still conniving and like sniveling, even though he's in rooms that no longer have Vader and Palpatine in them. And it gives you an idea of how conniving he is in rooms where he is in control, how it's all just a competition to suck up to him. And I love the conversation that Deidre has later where her superior, who I'm forgetting his character's name, but he's basically like, throw away your failures. This is a good thing. And if Krennic wants you on it, you're on it. No questions asked.
Yeah. I think the last thing I wanted to mention is, and I know you didn't care for this too much, but the wedding on Chandrila. First of all, I was really excited to see Chandrila. I've not seen the surface of that planet before. It's mentioned a lot in Legends, and it plays a big role in canon as well. When, for those who don't know, when the New Republic takes over, they move the capital from Coruscant to Chandrila, so that it sort of, they kind of take away the
move it away
the
from
Empire.
the hive of scum and villainy.
Right. And of course, it's really cool. Maybe this is just me being a fantasy nerd, but I really liked getting to see the different planets' cultures. And I liked watching how they did like the wedding and how they like spoke in the other language. And they had all these lines that you could tell were recited because this was like a sacred, rather stoic ceremony, the wedding was. I thought those were just some really neat details. Also, Mon Mothma's daughter is the worst.
Really? Why did you think she's the worst?
She's kind of bratty in the first season. And then in this season, like when she said, "I wish you were drunk," that line, that like made me mad because it was like her mom was trying to like let her know that she's on her side. Yeah, it was like she's like trying to be on her side and like, look, I know this is an arranged thing. You don't have to go through with it. And she like was so snotty and whiny. It made me kind of mad.
I'll say this about the Chandrila scenes. I felt like they went on a lot longer than I would have liked in certain sections. I do like the idea of Mon Mothma sitting down with what was her daughter's name, like Leda, right?
Leda.
Sounds just like Leah. I was reading it in the subtitles like Leia. No, Leda. I do love that moment of honesty with her where she says that she doesn't have to go through with it. And I love in the first episode the political games that are going on there. But I felt like they went a little overboard with the customs, especially the dance at the end, that I felt like went into the realm of awkward and not quite Star Wars. And I felt like if they had just pulled that back a little bit, I would have enjoyed it. And all the politics going on there with Mon Mothma and her husband and how they're trying to get money for the Rebel Alliance. In the show, it's played so low key. I feel like people that haven't been locked into Andor, it's going to go over their heads and just be super boring. You know what I mean?
I actually have something to say about that. Because I didn't rewatch the first season after viewing it the first time, I had forgotten that whole like interaction with her and that like banker or money broker or whatever. I think this was a me problem, but you are right. It's so low key. I was kind of lost. I'm not going to lie. I was super confused on large chunks of the Mon Mothma subplot. They kept talking about like getting a number and all this other stuff. And I was really lost. I could tell it was about money, but like the whole, oh, is he going to forge an alliance with this guy instead of us? Like, what's the problem with him doing that? Like, I didn't really get it.
Yeah, from what I understand is they're trying to get Mon Mothma's funds and funds of other people to fund the rebellion under the Empire's nose. And that guy has a very specific way to access that. And that's why losing him is such a big deal, because it will lose all funding for the rebellion, which is just now getting started.
I also, another thing I did like about the Mon Mothma subplot that I actually really appreciated in the first season too is I kind of like that she's like this. We know her from the original trilogy as being like the woman in charge of the Rebel Alliance. She's this very well respected strategist and politician that just is able to bring people together under the banner of the Alliance. But in here, before she is in that position of respect, she's having to navigate around her, like, quite frankly, airheaded husband who is more concerned with, like, the
Now
pomp and
he's
frills of her.
annoying.
Yeah, he's like this aristocrat who's very pro empire, but so long as he just gets to live his, like, lavish lifestyle. And seeing her as like being so clever and having to navigate around his, flightiness, it's pretty interesting.
It is, but again, it's a third of this whole show, it feels like. And
Yeah.
with that, it definitely drags. Moving on, what did you think of a lot of the stuff going on with Bix and a lot of the survivors of, what's that planet name at the end of the first season? Ferrix, from the planet of Ferrix. When we followed that group, I thought that subplot also went slow. I do like the character of Basso, and I do like Bix quite a bit. But again, there was a lot of manufactured drama there of sort of when were the Imperials going to strike. The danger there wasn't clearly as defined as I would like it to have been. It kind of slogged for me at parts too. And that's the thing where I find it difficult to really classify Andor under the Star Wars brand and the Star Wars umbrella, because I do think it's very good as a show, but I don't think that it necessarily serves the purposes that a Star Wars show should serve. It feels in a lot of ways like Disney is attempting to replicate the success that HBO has with, beginning it all the way back with The Sopranos, and then even recently shows like The Penguin that I also really love, but these adult dramas that fit in worlds like The Batman, where it's dark and gloomy and violence and murder and violence of all unsavory varieties occur. That feels appropriate for the world of Gotham and for the tone of Batman in some cases, violence and darkness. But the tone of Star Wars, it's supposed to be hopeful and uplifting, and there's going to be dark things that happen, but it's about fighting back. And there are ways to illustrate that are already so firm. Like the Empire, they're elitists. They starve people to death. They destroy worlds just because it suits them. We don't need to delve into the really, really, really dark recesses of someone's mind to explore those aspects that are touchy and uncomfortable. So overall, I think Andor could be enjoyed by an adult audience that maybe thinks that Star Wars needs to be matured and needs to be fleshed out in these realistic ways. But I think the audience that wants that type of Star Wars is not as big as the audience of Star Wars that, wants it to be whimsical and joyful and filled with adventure and love. And sometimes it feels like Andor is missing those key components that make Star Wars so great.
When I was watching A New Hope for the first time with my sister and her girlfriend at the time, we got to the scene where Leia was in the prison cell block on the Death Star and she was about to be interrogated. Vader had the interrogator droid brought in, and then, as it's floating towards her menacingly, the door slams shut and we cut to the next scene. And, they made a very astute comment in that moment. They said, what I appreciate about Star Wars is that you never have to worry about, those sorts of things, that type of assault. It's always, well, we've got truth serum, or we've got electronic shocks, or we've got the Force. You never have to worry about it getting graphic. And that was something I had agreed with them on. And I was like, you know what, you're right, because me personally, I don't handle violence against women like that very well. I don't. It's very upsetting to me.
Yeah,
And
I think
for
it's
me,
upsetting to a lot of people for sure.
it is. And for me, Star Wars has always been something like a safe haven from all that. It's in a galaxy far, far away. They have other ways of oppressing people, other ways of doing this, that, or the other. That the bad guys do one thing, the good guys rise up to stop them. And that line was something that I never had to worry about Star Wars crossing. And I don't want to be dramatic and say that they broke my trust tonight, but I was very, very displeased when I saw that. It does not belong in Star Wars at all. And it really just doesn't. And I think that's all I really want to say about it. I just hope they never ever do that again.
I agree with you. It's just the effort of the filmmakers trying to push that boundary of the Star Wars galaxy, when in reality, they should be trying to do the opposite. They should be attempting to make it more in line with what George Lucas had created and the stories that fill in with his universe and his universe of hope and
Yeah.
not of this galaxy that the creators of Andor are wanting to play in. Now, as a final product, I don't think that it's bad. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily believe that it fits under this brand, or that stories like that can't be handled in a tasteful, mature way, but just not with Star Wars, man. I don't love it in
No.
Star Wars. And I do think that it goes against the tone, but the filmmakers of Andor want to do that. Tony Gilroy, I think in an interview recently, said that he had had one conversation with George Lucas, and that was sort of it. But that's by design. They wanted to make a Star Wars product that was mature and dark, and they've definitely succeeded in that. And there's an audience out there that will really dig into and enjoy Andor for all of those reasons. Now, me, I don't personally go to Star Wars for those reasons and for dark,
No.
mature storytelling all of the time. Not that you can't have a villain be menacing and, filled with rage and be frightening without crossing certain lines. And I think it's unfortunate, but at the same time, if that's what you wanted to achieve, that's what you achieved.
I'll tell you something. You were talking about like what Star Wars really means to you and what you felt like Andor was missing, and this is how I feel about it. For me, the way that George Lucas modeled the Star Wars movies after old Hollywood. If you watch some of the Errol Flynn Robin Hood movies, what's really interesting is the way the actors, just the way that they act, the sort of voices that they do. You'll see it one to one with A New Hope. The way I actually watched it recently, the princess in the Errol Flynn Robin Hood movie, she talks exactly the way Princess Leia talks in A New Hope. With that sort of semi-transatlantic accent, very proper and pristine, but still fiery in the way she delivers her lines. The point to all this being, Star Wars is very operatic. It's very dramatic. People speak differently. They act differently. They carry themselves in a different light. It's not just people in a different galaxy rattling off, sci-fi jargon. They have an entirely different way about them. And it was one of those things where the actors constantly said this of George's writing: you can write this stuff, but you can't speak it. And that's kind of the point. It's supposed to be like a playwright. And that's a big thing that Disney Star Wars, that's the biggest thing they get wrong. And you see it kind of in Kenobi, kind of like with the way Reva acts, where she's
I wouldn't
like
say
kind of,
that's the biggest thing they get wrong. I think their handling of legacy characters is the biggest thing they get wrong. That's my number one by far.
I guess what I mean is in like terms of execution, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like direction. I think when it comes to like direction, I think that's why I don't get that Star Wars feeling, is because, it's just villains. They're even Grand Moff Tarkin, who's more pristine and like militaristic. He's still prone to going off on villainous speeches about power and dominion and all this other stuff. It's I don't even know how to articulate this well, just kind of off the cuff, but I feel like the people in the audience are going to understand what I mean, because you can tell a distinct difference.
They're very
yes,
grandiose.
There's a grandiosity, stage presence.
And Andor does a lot to subdue a lot of that. They intentionally pull it back, but instead of just pulling it back, they end up trying to make it something different. And that's where they fail. I think that you can do that. You can take that operatic nature and that operatic format that George does so well, and that really illustrates Into the Galaxy Far, Far Away really well. I think you can tone it down and you can make it make sense. I think you can tell a gritty story about a rebellion forming, and I think you can tell politics, but Andor takes it further than that. They still have these things that make it interesting, but they feel the need to over salt the sauce. They feel the need to add so much unnecessary things to it, to the point where it doesn't even taste like it should at the end anymore.
I think my closing thoughts is that I think what also hurts Andor's pacing, and this was a problem I think in season 1, and I'm starting to see it here. A lot of people complain that it's slow, and other people say, oh no, it's just more mature, and they're willing to sit and stew on some scenes. Well, that's fine, but I think one of the big things you learn in filmmaking is how to trim the fat, and there was a lot of fat. There, you mentioned it with like the sort of ceremonial wedding dance, but also there are some conversations that could use some trimming. There are some moments that just drag out way too long. It's like we don't have to see everything. You know what I mean?
I think it has better pacing than the first 3 episodes of season 1, but I still think the pacing has a lot to be desired. But overall, I'm just a guy on the internet with a YouTube channel. What does that mean at the end of the day? If you guys loved it, I sincerely hope that people do love it, and I would love to know why. And if it didn't work for them, I'd also love to hear in the comments what didn't work. But overall, I would say looks beautiful. The acting in it is really good across the board.
Phenomenal.
It's one of the best acted Star Wars projects in a very long time. And I think that they achieved exactly what they wanted to with Andor. And I'll just leave it at that.
And despite everything, I know I was kind of, heavy on the negative sort of here on the back end, but I will say, despite everything, I'm still looking forward to next week's episodes. I still like the show. I think it was, we talked about all the parts that we liked, and I'm eager to see what they do with it. And I really hope that Kathleen takes this as her big win.
I hope she does too. And guys, if you want to see our review for the next 3 episodes, let us know, and we'll keep doing them. But as always, may the Force be with you, and have a lovely day.
Bye.